Thanks for tuning into another Dolphins podcast. Week 16 is here. Kat and Houtz both joined me to preview Sunday's matchup between the San Francisco 49ers and the Miami Dolphins. Gentlemen, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, this might have been the best matchup of the entire Week 16 slate. Now that we've arrived, not so much.
Yeah, I didn't think at this point it'd be a matchup between 2 6-8 teams, and maybe not coincidentally, both are are Kyle Shanahan types of offenses that are, quite frankly, falling apart here in 2024. That's a little aggressive when we're just 2 weeks removed from Tua playing out of his mind, but last week for both teams. The 49ers losing 12-6 and the Dolphins losing 20-12. Massive for the lack of success of their season.
Yeah, it's been a sad state of affairs for both teams. And I thought you were going to say, Jake, in another reality, this might have been like a Super Bowl preview, right? A lot of people might have been talking Super Bowl in this aspect. And here we are, hanging on in the hunt by every little strand of hair, whatever it is. So, both of these teams have seen better days, but it's going to be a battle between those Shanahan trees.
Both the Dolphins and 49ers sit at 6-8. Both are dealing with a variety of injuries. Jalen Waddle, he is not practicing for the Miami Dolphins. He is listed as doubtful. Bradley Chubb remains limited as he works back from his knee injury. Mike Daniels said Cameron Good is actually a little ahead of him. I don't know exactly what that means. Maybe it means he's more likely to play Sunday. But then on the other side, you have no Christian McCaffrey, Jordan Mason, their backup running backs down. Basically, this is a very long-winded way of me to ask you, Kat, if you were managing one of these football teams and you know how much is at stake every week and every season, what kind of conversation would you want to be having right now in terms of Bradley Chubb and Jalen Waddle? Would you be leaning towards let's shut it down, the season's over, you're 6-8, or would you be still trying to fight and trying to find a way?
For me, sitting here, it would be shut it down. Bradley Chubb coming back with a 4% chance currently to make the playoffs after last night. No, I don't think that makes a lot of sense. In fact, just to go a step further, to me, the one thing with one of the very few things with the organization looking forward to next year is the possibility of Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips coming back and joining Chop Robinson. And maybe you can establish an identity that way. I don't know if Chubb will be on the team next year. Maybe they get out of that contract, but I tend to think he will still be on the team. So no, I definitely don't want to shut him down, but I think as long as the Dolphins are mathematically alive for the playoffs, they're going to be putting all their guys on the front line.
Yeah, I think we talked about a few weeks ago, Jake, and I think I said if you're Bradley Chubb, but why would you even come back if the Dolphins are mathematically eliminated? But it's easier for us to sit here and say it as an outsider's perspective. So these guys are going to go out there and battle their ass off. I can see. I was a little bit, thrown off by those, Cameron Good's further along than Bradley Chubb. I mean, I don't know, but I think we can all say that we're ready to look forward to 2025. Even Anthony Weaver, and hopefully, maybe we do see Bradley Chubb, Chop Robinson, and Jalen Phillips all line up. Because again, I think defenses and offenses and those quarterbacks would be, scared to death of that pass rush coming down their neck.
This is something Dustin and I spoke about a little earlier this week. Your guys' tone about next season wouldn't even improve slightly if someone like Bradley Chubb, he got hurt. He had the ACL injury, and then there was even longer than that, I believe, after the fact. Don't quote me on that. I don't have it in front of me. But if he was to come back and overcome that and just play 2 games, that doesn't really spark you guys a little bit more. If he was to come back and, say, get a sack each game, playing 20% of snaps, you don't see that as some sort of jolt or good vibes going into next season?
No, I don't. I'm not a big believer in carrying the good vibes going into next year, to be honest with you. I mean, I know what Bradley Chubb can do when he's healthy. I mean, when he went down with that, it just still aggravating to think about when and how he went down. This guy had 11 sacks and 6 forced fumbles on the season. I mean, I'm the former top 7 pick, 6'5", 270. If this guy can come back at 100%, yeah, I think he's one of the best, at least 15 edge players in the game. And Jalen Phillips, I believe, is in that category too. And have seen what Chop Robinson has done lately. So there's that. And I really do think at this point you have to ask yourself as a fan, even though it's a biological reaction for me to root for the Dolphins when the ball's kicked off, do you even really want them to win? the rest of the year, or would that just confuse things and throw everything off?
I mean, it would absolutely give us false hope, and I mean, I feel like a lot of fans are in that same predicament, right? I mean, I felt like that a couple weeks ago. Do we want to continue to be strung along in the hunt and to be put out of our misery in the end of the season against the Jets, in inevitable fashion? I don't know. I mean, I think Jake kind of turned me there with the whole Bradley Chubb thing. I mean, I could see why you want to sit him and you don't want him to go out there and even take the risk, but for him to go out there, I think it'd mean the world to him, and then to get those sacks, if he could get one in each game, I think we'd all feel some good vibes. But Kat, I kind of had to laugh because we know you're not about good vibes, man. You tell us how it is, and that's part of why we love you so much, man.
Every Friday we just get brought down to earth, and it really sets the tone, and I mean that in the most sincere way possible. That's so interesting. So Kat, did you enjoy, let's go back to the Wayback Machine, 2019, that wacky game against the Cincinnati Bengals? Did you enjoy that? Did you have fun?
See, that's a typical situation that we're in now, where, because that was the tank for Tua year, where it was called, actually turned out to be the tank for Burrow year. So really in those last 4 or 5 games when the Dolphins were winning, they had the win against the Bengals, had that win against the Eagles in the high scoring game, beat the Patriots in the final week. My head was telling me, no, I don't want the team to win, but it's just a reaction that you cheer when the Dolphins score. And you want them at the end of the game to win, even though it doesn't make sense. But no, every win ended up hurting the Dolphins a little bit more as far as the draft positioning in that draft. They ended up probably getting the guy they were going to draft anyway, which was Tua. And I kind of resigned the fact that after I saw them, start to gain some traction toward the end of that year, I didn't think they were going to find themselves in position to be number 1, which is where they had to be to get Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I mean, I can see where we're going and why we want to see a better draft pick. But if I'm being honest, I think it was back before the Jets game. I thought I was just texted DM and Jake, but I think I DM both of you. And I was like, can we just lose this game and put us out of our misery? So, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at, man. Keep stringing us along. We're going to inevitably be cheering for you once that ball is kicked off. But, I mean, as an outsider, man, you just see all these other teams. Every little thing that has to happen right for the Dolphins to even still be in this situation, and then to what? Go to Super Wildcard Weekend and get murked again? I mean, I'm sorry. I'm a Dolphins fan. I don't need to see my friends texting me telling me how bad we looked once again on primetime for the entire world to see.
And they should have lost to the Jets, too.
Yeah.
If not for, a 15-time Pro Bowler throwing the ball to a 7-time Pro Bowler, Devontae Adams, for what should have been the game-clinching field goal, and him inexplicably stepping out of bounds to stop the clock, the Dolphins would have lost that game in Miami. I mean, so much had to happen for them to win that game, and it's not a good situation. And that's why you have to ask yourself: would you rather the Dolphins go 6-11, clean house, and have the 8th pick in the draft, or would you rather have them go 9-8, pick 18th, and now we're sitting here with Chris Greer and McDaniel saying, "Well, what do we do with these guys now?"
More speed, baby. Let's find another way. Let's find the fastest, smallest lineman.
That'll be the answer. Draft a receiver.
Never ending, though. It's never ending.
It's a cycle we are trapped in as fans of the Miami Dolphins. Kat, how much did Miami's 12-point showing last week on offense have to do with being down your top 3 offensive tackles? You mentioned it. So much had to go right when Tua was throwing the ball 47 times a game, and he wasn't throwing an interception in those 47 snaps. The statistical odds of that are absolutely through the roof. So was that just everything crashing down to earth last week?
I wonder how much the offensive line and their 3 top tackles being out, combined with their bad guard play, how much that got into Tua's head. Because, the pass protection was obviously as a whole bad, but even on the plays where it wasn't bad, Tua made it bad. So, yeah, it was terrible. And, I don't care if you like what you think of Pro Football Focus. I have my own opinions on them. They graded the loss to the Texans as Tua's worst game of his career by far. So, and I think one of us watching that game can't really disagree with that, just regardless of what you think about PFF or not. So, yeah, I mean, it's been typical of this season where for 2 games in a row against the Packers, against the Jets, this defense can't stop anyone, and Tua puts up the numbers that he does. Now this defense against the Texans plays out of their mind, holds C.J. Stroud under 140 yards, Joe Mixon to under 2 yards a carry, and the Dolphins give the game away, largely because of the offensive line and the quarterback.
It's just, I mean, yeah, that's a testament to just what we have to deal with. I mean, it's just not our season. But having your tackles out, I mean, you guys both mentioned it. Absolutely, all three tackles, right? I mean, it's just an absolutely ever ending thing of injuries with the offensive line. I think that's what we kind of all inevitably thought would happen, right? At the beginning of the year, we're sitting here talking, feeling a good story, Teron Armstead, things like that. But we knew some point in the season it was going to eventually fall apart, and it did. So Tua, worst game. I think we can all agree with that. Hope to see more of. Hope to see him improve on that. I mean, you can only go up from there, but that was an absolute dismal showing, and not having your best offensive lineman out there, arguably. I mean, that definitely hurt him.
Hey, I'll tell you what, though. Patrick Paul at left tackle. I have major concerns with him as a run blocker, but as a pass protector, guy that you take at the end of the second round, guy who's 6'8", 330 plus pounds, had college production, and I thought a guy for being a late second rounder was really being overthought, where it's like, this is just a big son of a gun that takes a long time to run around or run through. If that's who he turns out to be, I think that is a major steal for the Dolphins. And then if you have Chop Robinson and Patrick Paul, and then you get Malik Washington in the late rounds, this could shape up to be a pretty decent draft. It's kind of funny what happens when you have draft picks. So it's a combination of not having draft picks and the guys you traded for now turning into pumpkins at midnight.
Someone might clip that and try to extend Chris Greer with just your words right there. Just talking about Patrick Paul and Chop Robinson, etc.
Kat, how does that work? So the left tackle, obviously the idea is you're protecting the quarterback's blind side. Not in Miami because Tua's left-handed. So the idea, the concept, I mean, Teron Armstead has always been great at being that run-blocking left tackle. It's been so much fun to see him run into the second level, third level, eat some safeties here or there. What would that do to the Miami Dolphins offense if you're sacrificing that run game creation ability, and on top of that, you also have somebody who isn't protecting the blind side, which seems to be a little more valuable? Does that kind of make things feel a little more awkward? Is that any sort of negative turn? I don't know.
The right tackle position, even though it hasn't been great for the Dolphins with Austin Jackson and Kendall Lamb over the last couple of years, I think they've made do with below average players. So they've made that part of their offensive line work. The problem is they get absolutely no push inside. And looking to the future here, the Dolphins are going to miss Teron Armstead regardless, because when he's healthy and he's out there, whether he's being held together by pins and needles or not, he's one of the best left tackles in the game. So that's going to be a loss. It's probably going to be a loss this offseason. But I think moving forward, given that you're going to move on from Teron Armstead, having someone like Patrick Paul behind him who's got the size and has the potential to at least be a really good pass protector is something good to have in the chamber.
So one of the most shocking stats, Josh, I want to get your thoughts and if it'll change this week. The Miami Dolphins, entering Week 16, have yet to have an 100-yard rusher. They face a San Francisco defense that has given up over 100. It's averaging 140 rushing yards allowed per game. I think it's 143 yards last week against the Rams. Josh, is this the week they turn the page? Do we see a 100-yard rusher for once?
Man, I don't know. That defense is no joke in San Francisco. And I just want to touch on real quick the offensive line. You mentioned losing Teron Armstead. Kendall Lamb's going to probably likely be gone as well. And I don't know. Do either of you think last week's fate would have been any different if instead of a checks note Jackson Carman, they would have started Isaiah Wynn or something like that out there? Or, maybe even moved. I don't even want to think about Liam Eichenberg at right tackle. But there's some moves I think could have been made at offensive line that maybe could have made things a little bit easier last week. For answer your question, though, Jake, I don't think we're going to see that 100-yard rusher this week. I mean, it's just been absolutely bad up front. They've been getting absolutely pushed around. You saw Liam Eichenberg. I mean, he was getting
What moves would you make this week?
For me, I mean, I won't mind seeing Isaiah Wynn, but at the same time, I mean, is Kendall Lamb, is he's up in the air, right? I mean,
trending in the right direction.
Yeah, so if you get your tackles back, I mean, right there's a start. I still think you'd find a way to get Isaiah Wynn at guard. I mean, I thought he looked pretty good at right guard, but again, I don't think that's your biggest issues. I don't know. I don't know if there's any moves to be made there. What about you, Kat? You see any moves to be made? I just don't know that Jackson Carman was the answer last week. I mean,
I was a little stunned that an hour and a half, 2 hours before kickoff, Kendall Lamb turned out wasn't going to play. I knew he was questionable, but he was always expected to play. And no, I agree with Josh. I thought Isaiah Wynn would play guard and Liam Eichenberg would play right tackle. I don't know if that would improve the result, but if Liam Eichenberg can't play all 5 line positions, what is he good for? I mean, I thought he would play right tackle, which is a position the Dolphins originally drafted him to play. And at least you've got a rosterable guard and a tackle that has some experience instead of literally you pulled this guy off the street a couple of weeks ago and he's protecting Tua's blind side. I mean, I blame Tua for most of the problems there on offense, but no wonder why he was crapping his pants on offense. I mean, and Jackson Carman played better than I thought he would, and he still whiffed on 3 or 4 blocks.
I believe that was Jackson Carman's first experience ever playing tackle. His best run as a pro was when the Cincinnati Bengals went on that playoff run to the Super Bowl. They were mixing things around on the offensive line, and one of the biggest storylines around that team was, oh my God, we can't believe how well this offensive line was playing. And I think he was like a right guard at that time. I really think that was kind of a strange move.
It was his first time playing right tackle. He was a left tackle in college. He was a second-round pick, and the Bengals drafted him and kicked him inside to guard. That's right. Then when there was an injury during the Super Bowl year, they kicked him back out to left tackle. He played halfway decent down the stretch, and then he went right back to sucking. And when you cut a former second-round pick on a rookie contract, suffice to say the guy can't play. And then he's been given opportunity after opportunity to be a good player, and he hasn't been. So, yeah, I'd rather have the combination of Eichenberg at right tackle and Wynn at guard as opposed to Jackson Carman anywhere.
Josh, do you remember what Miami's 2 upgrades to the offensive line was when free agency started this year?
No, I'm an idiot.
They re-signed Isaiah Wynn, who obviously didn't want to play, and they signed Jack Driscoll. So you kind of see why the Miami Dolphins are in this situation right now. Kat, if the Dolphins were to make a move this week, let's say Kendall Lamb's back, what would your impression be of I think I might move Robert Jones to right guard. I might put Isaiah Wynn at left guard because he has his experience over there with Armstead. And I think playing next to Armstead's about as easy it could be for any type of offensive lineman. And then Eichenberg, maybe it's time to kind of sit down for a little bit and maybe take a few snaps off.
Yeah, I'm hoping I'm actually hoping Patrick Paul just starts the rest of the year, to be honest with you, given what I said earlier in the show. So my hope is from left to right: Patrick Paul, Isaiah Wynn, Aaron Brewer, Robert Jones, who I like only slightly more than Eichenberg, and then Kendall Lamb at right tackle. And I don't care. Liam Eichenberg can go set pins in a bowling alley for all I care.
The coach has alluded to making changes too, right? So, I mean, maybe there's some hope there, right? We're all crossing our fingers, but it feels like it's just too little too late.
Speaking of making changes, Kat, looking at the Houston game, I think even looking at the Jets game, I think there's just been a lack of urgency, maybe a lack of explosiveness from this Miami Dolphins offense. And I think what's been frustrating is we haven't seen things change. What we have seen change is actually the disappearance of a run game. The Miami Dolphins had the same exact struggles with good offenses or good defenses, good teams last year, and yet they were leading the league in rushing yards per carry. So take away the rushing game, nothing else has happened. What do we need to see change with this Miami Dolphins offense? Who would you like to see get involved this weekend when you consider Jalen Waddle doubtful, Odell Beckham Jr. on the streets, running out of options?
Yeah, I think the Dolphins have handled their backfield as poorly as you possibly could have this year. You take Devon Achane and you run him straight up the gut 10 to 15 times. Jalen Wright, you don't get involved ever. Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson should add somewhat of a power element to your team. You don't ever use them for anything. And then Alec Ingold is never the answer on 3rd and 1. I mean, you're 0 for 5 in making decisions there. And that's why, I mean, Mike McDaniel's supposed to be this offensive genius. These are easy things to figure out. I mean, you can't. Let's take a look at the Texans game here. Jeff Wilson, a guy who put the exclamation point on 2 of the Dolphins' wins this season. You're not going to have him as a power element on an offense that can't run. At least you can run play action. You can get some inside tough yards occasionally and give the defense something to think about. But that's why when I look at this team, look, I'm not going to muddy the waters by saying Chris Greer can stay or anything. I like Greer more than I like McDaniel. That's for sure. But they can both go.
I'm throwing. I don't know what that knocked me out a little bit. Yeah, you asked who's going to step up, Jake. I mean, Malik Washington, right? He led the team in receiving last week, 5 catches on 6
So
targets,
gross.
52 yards. Yeah, it is gross. But with Jalen Waddle out, I mean, I'd like to see him step up. But you asked, who we really want to see step up. How about Tyreek Hill? I mean, this dude's getting paid infinite money. We see him being part of the, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. He's out there running shitty routes. He's getting bumped off in time, so he's not fully he's not clear of the blame. So I'd like to see Tyreek Hill step up and do something this season because, he really hasn't done much of anything this year.
Raheem Mostert last week, 6 carries for 8 yards, a long of 6. Devon Achane, 12 carries, 41 yards, a long of 7. The week previous, Jeff Wilson, 1 carry, 1 reception. I don't have it right in front of me, but I know both of those plays helped convert a first down. I don't know, man. That's been one of the most confusing developments is you're supposed to have all these different levers you can pull. And then all of a sudden we're hearing stories in the middle of the Jets game about how Tua had to go to McDaniel at halftime and talk like, hey, maybe we should get Jonnu Smith involved. It's just been very weird where I don't know if McDaniel's been caught up in a lot, and I don't want to sit here and even try to think of excuses, but I think that's where I've been let down the most, where last night the Denver Broncos, they lost to the Chargers, but they used 5 different running backs in the first quarter. 5 different running backs. Like, Miami has at least 4 capable ones that would all add a different dimension. And when you're seeing Waddle go down and you have River Craycraft just running ghost routes because you're not going to target him ever after he's been here for 3 years, what are you doing? Like where you're just wasting everybody's time. You wasted time flirting with Odell Beckham throughout the offseason. Like Greer's been here since 2016, even McDaniel since 2022. You know how organizations operate, and you spent half the offseason being unprepared, basically.
Well, yeah, unprepared, and also too, and to be very clear, this is why I don't want Chris Grier to stay. This is a team where the offense is too small and the defense is too old, and that's Grier 100% owns that. And you just sit here in so many of these losses here, where the opposing quarterback, Josh Allen, 139 yards, Anthony Richardson, 129 yards, C.J. Stroud threw for 131. Will Levis and Mason Rudolph combined for 110. I mean, you're talking about guys. 1, 2, 5 of their 8 losses, the opposing quarterback didn't throw for over 160 yards. I mean, it's pathetic. And this, if you're a winning football team and you're just bigger and stronger than the Dolphins, how can you not sit back and just say, you know what, we're just going to play our safeties back. We're going to pressure the quarterback as much as we can with the front 4. And we're just going to watch this team mess up over and over again. And that's happened. Again, over the last 27 months, this team is 1-17 against playoff teams. 1-17. I don't know how you don't accidentally win more games against good teams. But at that point, I can't point up to the press box on all of that when you can never get your team up for the game.
I threw up in my mouth, man. I mean, I feel like I kind of liked McDaniel, and that's why I was kind of like, wow, I was surprised because you said about Grier. But, I mean, just listening to all this, it feels like the Dolphins have only one decision to make, and we know what's going to happen at the end of the year. They'll run it back or whatever. But am I wrong to think that he had at least a better grasp of his, running back room in years past? I mean, I felt like he had a change of pace. He knew when to use a Jeff Wilson at times. This year, it's just, let's run Devon Achane up the gut and hope that this tiny dude can just come out the other side and break off a big play that we have not seen all season. I don't know, man. It's just, I feel like it was a mirage for so long what Mike McDaniel was bringing to the table that to see it all just disappear this season, it's hard to believe.
Last Sunday against the Houston Texans was arguably Tua Tagovailoa's worst performance of his NFL career. 3 interceptions, 4 turnovers, and to me, even more frustrating than the turnovers, because if you want to argue on massive threads on X about how Tyreek could have caught, I don't care. To me, the biggest concerns were there were plays where he had time in the pocket, and a lot of those plays ended with either a dump off or throwing it out of bounds. What you want from a franchise quarterback is if he has time in the pocket. I mean, we're Dolphin fans. We know if Tom Brady had more than 2.5 seconds in that pocket, it was going to be Jimmy Wilson running for his life for 60 yards as Wes Welker goes the distance. So as we look at a San Francisco team that's making a trip across the country, they're about as down in the dumps as the Dolphins are. Dre Greenlaw, I think he's questionable. I believe Sorry, I have two different things in notes here. I think Nick Bosa, he's also questionable. So, Kat, looking back at the Houston performance, how does Tua respond this weekend?
All right, well, they're at home in a game that they should win against, maybe win, against a below 500 team. So I think he'll respond well. I mean, that's where we are right now. And look, yeah, I mean, you look at the injuries for the 49ers. I mean, Brandon Ayuk out for the year. Trent Williams not playing in this game. They're missing their top 4 running backs. Bosa didn't practice today. Malik Collins on the inside didn't practice. They have a pretty decent secondary. I think he'll respond pretty well here. But Tyreek Hill, this just came in, breaking news during this segment. Tyreek Hill is not questionable for the game with a wrist injury. So
nice.
It'll be fascinating. It would be a fascinating test case to see what happens if Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill didn't play in this game against a somewhat decent 49ers secondary. Their run defense is bad, but their secondary is pretty decent. It would be fantastic to watch in a season that's spiraling out of control.
And I mean, that's the injury probably that's been, kind of lingering all season long, and to have it come up now, and I don't know, man, it just feels like at this point this season is, it's time to make those moves. And yeah, I'd be interested to see the way this offense really, gets moving without if it does at all, without Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, right? I mean, then we're going to see Devon Achane get 14 balls and, all the bubble screens.
How many times does this need to happen until someone like McDaniel takes the hint, though? Like, you get into a situation where Tyreek Hill's limited or Waddle's limited and nobody else can do anything. Like, how many games do you have to get into where these guys, I mean, Kat, you blew my mind that Juwan Jennings is 6'3". I mean, the Dolphins have some of the smallest wide receivers, and you're just banking on them to be there and be available every single play. Do you think last week would have looked any differently if Waddle was involved and didn't go down that early in the game? I'd even argue that if you knew going into the game that Waddle wasn't going to be available, that would have made the offense maybe look 10% better at the very least.
Maybe, but how many times do we have to get into the third quarter in these big games and Tyreek Hill has one catch and Jalen Waddle has gotten blanked or is injured? I mean, this happens all the time, and it's not a coincidence when you look at their size. And just going back to last year, I felt there was a time late last year where they really got figured out on offense.
Yep.
They basically said, let's move our safeties back and let's give them the underneath stuff. We'll give them 7 yards at a time. They'll get greedy. They'll get stupid. And at a certain point, they're just going to vomit all over themselves. That's what's happened every time they've played a good team. And that's unfortunately why everything here has to change. This doesn't work, and it's not going to work. So the hope is that you start stockpiling draft picks after this year and build a more physical football team with a different head coach on the sideline and a different GM up in the press box.
And that's the most frustrating thing. We're still doing this what if stuff, right? What if Jalen Waddle's out there? What if Tyreek Hill's out there? What if Tua Tagovailoa get hurt? We'd be 11-3. The what ifs, it just always is something with the Dolphins. So I don't know. It just feels like this team is, like you mentioned, they're just who they are, we know we are, who they think they are. They're a team that's going to fall apart late. A team that, like you mentioned, was figured out last season. We all hoped it wasn't true, but as the season, 16 weeks into it, yeah, we're figured out. The Dolphins are cooked.
If you think Tua's going to bounce back, though, because it does kind of fit the narratives of team under 500, you're at home. Hell, they kind of even swept this game under the rug by moving the Bills-Patriots game back to 4 o'clock, where this is the 4:25 game, but I think they did that to make that like the featured presentation. Kat, who has a big game? Is it Tyreek Hill? Is he going to do in my fantasy football season? Is it another Malik Washington performance? If this is that, like, I think it does have the making of that, like, fake eat the cheese, like, yeah, the McDaniel offense, it figures it out, this opportunity against a team traveling. Who really steps up in that scenario?
I think they would have if they could have. I mean, how does somebody not accidentally step up now? I mean, how long have we been waiting for Julian Hill to step up and make a decent play? I'll tell you what, he hasn't been penalized as much lately, so I guess that's a breakout in itself. But you never have these situations this year where a different guy steps up. And Malik Washington has showed maybe some signs of that, but like this week, hey, we're going to throw everybody off. Alec Ingold's going to slip out into the flats several times. We're not going to be expecting that. He's going to catch 3 passes for 50 yards. And no, it's never that. It's going to be Tyreek Hill and Waddle, and if they stop it, they stop the offense.
Yep.
And that's what's happened. This whole thing is a house of cards, and McDaniel's failure to adjust offensively, combined with an obvious lack of respect for him on the team, is why it's showing this.
We might be getting ready for a River Craycraft master. If for some reason Tyreek and Jalen Waddle are out, I mean, I'm looking at this this depth chart. D. Eskridge, isn't he also questionable? I mean, the Dolphins,
won't play, I think.
Their receiving unit's starting to look a little bit suspect. So Jonnu Smith's probably the most the guy that you can really know that's going to give you the yards and be that viable target throughout a game. The guy you can depend on in a case where you can't a Tyreek Hill and a Jalen.
I hope that guy who breaks out is Jalen Wright.
Yep.
Because it's badly needed. And secondly, he is somebody in the last 3 games, if you actually decide to get him on the field and he gets some running room, maybe we're sitting here at the end of the year and saying, okay, Chop Robinson has shown star potential. Patrick Paul's our future left tackle. Jalen Wright has shown something now, and Malik Washington at least be our kick returner, 3rd or 4th receiver here. That's a pretty good class. Maybe that's something you can start to build on to finally put a positive spin on something here.
We're Dolphin fans, and we just got to, make up scenarios. Kat, what's the odds that Jalen Wright and Devon Achane, especially if Wright, he can step up over the next few weeks, we could spend all offseason talking about them being the next Sonic and Knuckles, the David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. Like, if you want to build it, I mean, having those 2 guys in the backfield, you see what difference it can make.
I thought the value of Jalen Wright was you would be able to get Jalen Wright and Devon Achane on the field at the same time. But then that's where it reveals how structurally bad this is. Because if you put them on the field, you're also going to put Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill and Jonnu Smith on the field. You've got 3 of the smallest players at their respective positions. Actually, 5 if you take the running backs into account. So I thought they're either going to spread the field this year and really run the Mike Martz offense from 20 years ago, and it's really going to work this time and it's going to go really well, or it's all going to fall apart. And I think we've seen at times some shades of both, but against the good teams, it falls apart.
And just another gripe, didn't we spend so much time this offseason talking about, the speed and special teams, the kick returns are going to be so dynamic. Danny Crossman's going to have this all figured out too. And instead we got to listen to both Danny Crossman and Mike McDaniel come out and say, yeah, we knew they were going to go for a fake punt and we still didn't defend it. That's even worse than saying you weren't ready for it, is saying, no, we knew it was coming and you still fell for it. That's like going to shake someone's hand and you wanted to get the shock buzzer just to kind of feel alive. Like, is that what the Dolphins coaching staff is doing at this point?
Yeah,
it's just
I miss Darren Rizzi so much, and Keith Armstrong, really good special teams coaches, Mike Westhoff of the past, these guys who really knew what they were doing. This guy is a bum. I mean, you have, how is it every game you have 1 or 2 special teams gaffes? I mean, special teams should be a pretty straightforward deal. You stay in your lane, especially now with the kickoff rules.
Yep.
You catch the punt, you make the field goals, which Jason Sanders has done except for extra points. And you just don't mess up in other areas. And, you had the fake punt here. You had the missed extra point the last 2 games. You had the Malik Washington mistake. You had several long runs back to the 40 over the last 3. I mean, it's just one thing after another. And the Dolphins special teams, I forget who the guy is. I think it's Rick Gosling, who ranks the special teams. That's kind of his niche every year. Always has the Dolphins at the bottom. And you don't have the balls to fire this guy. I don't know what he has over the rest of the team.
That's what I wanted to say. I mean, I would have loved to see Mike McDaniel just show some kind of, fight and just, okay, this dude, the unit sucks. The special team sucks. We've not seen it get any better over the last few years. Let's get rid of this guy. But nope, he's still lingering. And last week, that was a monumental play that absolutely shifted that game. So fire Danny Crossman into the sun, please.
Following the Chargers win over the Broncos, I'm just going to say it real quick. Miami, if they win out, plus 2 Denver losses and a Colts loss, or 2 Chargers losses and a Colts loss, or 2 Denver losses and 2 Chargers losses, or 3 Baltimore losses and a Colts loss, the Dolphins will make the playoffs. None of that stuff matters because I don't think they can string together 3 consistent games of worthy ball to get to that opportunity. Kat, I don't want the prediction for the game, but instead I'd love to get your thoughts on who would pop off the screen to you? Who do you want to see get some snaps, or who do you want to see really start to take advantage of a little increased opportunity as we get closer to the end of the year?
Jalen Wright, 50-50 split with Devon Achane. And you didn't ask for it, but I'm still going to say Dolphins 23-9 in this game. I think they have a great defensive performance.
I want to see Patrick Morris do something. Is he healthy, right? Like, we need a safety to step. We need somebody to do something. So let's see if I was going to joke and say Channing Tindall, but I don't think he's ever going to even see the field. But damn, Cat threw me off again with that prediction because he's got the Dolphins winning. I'll go 17-14 Dolphins. I don't know if you're asking predictions now, Jake, but let's go with it, man. 17-14. I don't know if that's good or not.
27-6. Yeah, I think this is going to be one of the games we're all going to sit there and be like, yeah, we're back. We're so back. But that's what it is. And you know what? We're Dolphin fans. We're going to cheer. We're going to have fun. And if I get to be happy for a Sunday, somehow I'm going to trick myself into thinking that's a good thing. But that is it. That is all the time we have today on Another Dolphins Podcast. If we don't talk to you before then, I hope everyone out there has a wonderful Merry Christmas, a wonderful holiday season. Thank you for spending part of your year with us. Thank you all for listening to Another Dolphins Podcast. Until next time, fins up.
Fins up.